The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is Music Weekly, which actually happens to be Music Monday this week on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. So glad to have you along with us one day later than normal because we typically record this on Sunday night, although if you're listening to this podcast on Monday, this might not be any different than you are normally used to with our music show that airs each and every Monday, but we had a busy weekend, which we're going to be talking more about on Thursday, specifically the anime portion of it, as we have just returned from Animazement, which was an awesome event this weekend in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. So we are running a couple of days late on some things, but we will kind of get things caught up as we get back into this week and kind of get back to a regular schedule. Joining me, as always, for Music Weekly is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It is going. I am still in recovery mode, but I have successfully reviewed some music today and also assembled a treadmill, so I'm slowly getting back into it.
Yeah, I kind of feel that. It's a long trip down to Raleigh. We left on Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock Eastern time, and it's about 8 hours if you don't stop, but you have to stop. So it is about a 10-hour drive down. Now, on the way back, it would have been a little bit shorter, but we ran into some biblical rain in Charleston, West Virginia. Probably as hard as I've seen it storm in a while. Probably a good thing we didn't leave earlier. I just saw today that evidently the National Weather Service did say the tornado hit in Jackson, Ohio, and actually was right near I-30 or US 35, which, of course, we take to go through Jackson. So probably a good thing we weren't a little bit ahead of schedule and ran into that. But overall, it was a great weekend. I'm done driving in the mountains for a little while. It is a lot of stress, but it was a great weekend. We're going to talk specifically about the anime portion of Animazement coming up on Thursday during our Anime Thursdays event. So make sure you check that out. It was a great convention. I can't really say enough good things about Animazement to the point where it's becoming a con that we just have to go to every year because it's so good. But we'll talk more about that part on Thursday. Of course, on Music Weekly, we always talk about new music releases. This week, we're going to be talking about the music releases of May the 10th. Chris is in parts unknown, but not able to join us this week. Of course, the schedule changing and everything like that, certainly kind of throwing things off. We'll get back to our regular schedule. Chris will be back with us soon, so he'll be able to give you his music takes. But we do have a couple of picks from him this week, which we will be spotlighting along with our picks from Mike and I. And then, of course, Mike and I will go to the vault and talk about some classic releases. But we kind of wanted to start with just a panel that we attended at Animazement. And, of course, we are the Nerdcast Empire. Our interests are kind of
varied.
Yeah, I think. And because of that, we do talk about Japanese music from time to time. And we attended a panel on Japanese rock bands, specifically female Japanese rock bands. And overall, I thought it was an excellent panel. I know you've got a little information pulled up on that, kind of just some general thoughts and just maybe catch the listeners up on kind of what that was all about.
Yeah, there's a group of panelists actually at Animazement. They put on kind of awesomely bad videos as well as this shoujo rock heaven, that being female rock essentially. But yeah, I guess they do this every year, and in this time was no different. They featured a slate of more current girl rock bands essentially in Japan, which I thought was really cool and just different because you don't really see that kind of music ever being spotlighted here in the States. It's the idea, you don't typically have a bunch of high school kids picking up guitars and wanting to be in a rock band here as much as you do over there for whatever reason. But yeah, they feature some videos by bands such as Hanabi, Trident, Humpback, Boundary, Love Bites, among others. Just really cool stuff, and I think something that it would be kind of neat as we find more and more of that to actually spotlight it here as well.
I know you just pasted the link to their Facebook page in our Discord. If you don't mind pasting that into the chat as well of this week's edition.
That would require me actually jumping into the
which would probably be
Twitch,
good.
Which would also be smart.
Good to join us on our broadcast, but because we'll also need you eventually to post the link to your playlist for this week as well. But yeah, it was first off, evidently a lot of those bands come from the Osaka area. So if you are in Osaka, you're probably going to get a chance to see these bands. And it's almost the second wave of female rock groups. And a lot of it is somewhat tied to popular anime back in the late 2000s. The show K-On! With the light music group in that show really drove a lot of not just female bands, but even male bands, high schoolers, to pick up their instruments and learn how to play music. And of course, a show that I've touted very heavily, Bocce the Rock, that I thought was really one of the outstanding shows of its season. Looking forward to more Bocce the Rock, but it drove these bands to come out of the woodwork as well. And you even mentioned that you've watched videos where they've spotlighted some of the actual brands, that the instruments that the girls play in the show, and how there's been this just swell in Japan of people buying these specific instruments to be able to start their high school rock band.
Yeah, I believe if I remember right, the main character from Bocce the Rock plays like a Les Paul Custom or Les Paul studio guitar, and they started jumping off shelves over there. There's actually a YouTube channel. I'm trying to think of which one it was. I'd have to verify this. Let's see. I'm sure it'll show up in my... It's not that guy. But anyway, there's a channel that does a lot of guitar unboxings, and he had a kind of a series where he was bringing over different guitars that were featured on anime. I think he did the Bocce guitar. He also did the guitar that was featured on Beck, Mongolian Chop Squad, which was really cool as well. Y'all have to figure that out and find it and post it when I do.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
But it's kind of funny, and I guess pretty comparable to like over here when Stranger Things had their one character was playing like the BC Rich guitar, and next thing you know, people were going out and buying it. I assume it's similar to that. I've not seen it, but I know that was kind of a big deal for a period of time.
Yeah, I think so. It's why these companies are smart to go with the product placement in these shows, because you just never know. You get in that cult show that takes off, and it could just absolutely, whatever you pay for that placement, it's going to pay itself back tenfold, maybe 100-fold. I think the funny thing is I do remember seeing stories of a lot of return instruments as well, because people get them and they think, oh, I guess I can't play this. So it actually is harder than the characters in the show make it look. But it's great to see. And again, maybe we'll spotlight some of those bands. It was a really good panel, and something that it's kind of hard sometimes over here to find out when a lot of these Japanese bands release albums. We do have a system, or actually specifically you have a system, as you've posted that YouTube video in our chat.
That's actually the playlist for this week.
Oh, okay. That's the playlist for this week.
Yeah.
So that is a lot easier to put together because you have some great sources and you're able to find those things on YouTube. And we do run a couple weeks behind, which allows for most of that stuff to be up by the time you go look for it. Sometimes the Japanese bands, sometimes you have a hard time finding the song, even if you do find the album. Some artists don't necessarily post their stuff worldwide, so that can be a challenge. Japan is still a country that rights issues as far as using songs can be a challenge, as you and I both know, in creating YouTube videos.
Absolutely.
There's still some YouTube videos that both of us have created that I don't think are visible in Russia because of rights issues with the Japanese music. So it can be an interesting process, but really good panel. Definitely something that we will try to spotlight a little more as we go forward here on our weekly music show on the Nerdcast Empire.
One thing, too, real quick, kind of about that convention in general, is that they're really good about focusing on the musical side of that area, as far as whether it's like this, where you're talking about rock bands, you're talking about anime songs. They actually had a couple voice actresses, a mother and daughter, Honoka Inoue and Kikuko Inoue, that did basically a karaoke set there. Like, just something else really kind of cool, where they were doing karaoke versions of classic anime songs. They have numerous traditional Japanese instrumentalists come over to perform, and they even open up the one traditional concert on Sunday for non-con goers to attend, to kind of further expose people to the culture. I think it's just a really cool thing.
Yeah, it really is, and we'll definitely get into more details on that. I actually wrote down the set list that they performed during that concert because we weren't allowed to film anything with our cameras, but I was quick to take notes as far as the songs they did perform, so we'll spotlight those coming up on Thursday, on Anime Thursday. So make sure you join us for that. Should be sometime around 8:30, 9 o'clock Eastern Time Thursday night to bring you the latest edition of Anime Thursday, which is very much going to focus on Animazement and to kind of tease it a little bit. We did get a chance to make some connections with one of the panelists, which was really cool. And I bought some laser discs, which was certainly interesting.
A laser disc.
And we got a bag of biscuits.
Yeah, got a bunch of biscuits.
That's our tease of our trip to and from Animazement. You'll have to tune in Thursday if you want to hear the full story about all of those things coming up.
So the YouTube channel in question, which I thought was correct, is the Trogley's Guitar Show channel. I found the video where he's unboxing the Beck guitar, so I shared that in the Twitch stream as well.
Yeah, there you go. Make sure you check that out. Really good stuff there. So, like I said, we'll talk more about the convention itself coming up on Thursday. But it's time to get to the meat and potatoes of Anime Weekly. See, I'm already throwing.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Music Weekly. We're going to be talking about the music from May the 10th. And honestly, I thought it was a really good week. There's a lot of really good stuff that didn't make the cut in our 6 songs, but overall, I thought were really high quality stuff. We'll always let you go first, Mike. Of course, we have the link, as you can see in the chat, that you can go through and you can listen to all the stuff that came out on May the 10th and make your own list. Of course, we tagged the bands that we will be spotlighting in our Facebook post. So if you check out our Facebook page, you can go and follow these bands, support these bands, buy the albums, buy merch from them. It's a great way to keep this type of music alive because I feel like it is very much undersupported. And there's a couple of these bands this week that I just think there's no reason this particular band shouldn't be huge because of the sound they're putting out. But always exciting, Music Weekly. And we're going to start off with Mike. And you've got 2 bands, as always, that you're going to spotlight their releases from May the 10th. What do you have for us first?
Yeah, it was a really strong week. And I feel like there were things that on my initial listen, I thought, hey, I need to come back to these guys. And I just haven't gotten around to all of them yet. So I definitely have some more work to do as far as listening to more of those bands that I thought had potential. For my first pick this week, I'm picking a band that's been around since 1980. They've had some breaks along the way, but this is actually the 6th studio album by this band. They're from California. They are just kind of a classic heavy metal band. This day in metal referred to them as epic metal legends. The band is Warlord, and the album is Free Spirits Soar.
Yeah, one thing that we talk about all the time on this show is there are so many of these bands that have been doing this for so long, and we just have not come across them, or maybe we've just basically maybe heard of them. Like, I kind of vaguely heard their name, but this show has given us a chance to check these bands out, and they're continuing to release good music. And this, like you said, just a great rock album. Tell us more about Free Spirits Soar.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, this band has had some start and stops along the way. They were active from 1980 to 86, then again in 2001 to 2002, 2011 to 2021, and then they picked back up again in 2023. Unfortunately, the break in 2021 was due to the unfortunate passing of their founder, guitarist, and main composer, Bill Samus. In 2023, they reunited with singer Giles Lavery, who's been in the band since 2013, and founding member Mark Zonder, basically to complete this album, kind of in honor of Samus, who had passed. I guess he had already pretty much written all of this stuff and played some of the guitar on it. They brought in another guitarist who's the majority of the recording is his work, but all written by Bill Samus. Just definitely epic metal, but in a classic melodic way. It's not overly heavy, I don't think, in any points. Doesn't feel very modern in a way, but I think that's kind of to its tribute. Like, I think it's a good thing. Kind of reminds me of Shadow Gallery's Digital Ghost album. Maybe not sonically as much as just the fact that this is an album that was produced after one of the main members of the band passed away. In that case, it was the singer, who wasn't necessarily a lead songwriter, but still just so important to the sound of the band. And I think it's really cool that in this case they were able to pick up the recordings that they'd already done and the written material and come out with what they did. On this album, songs like Conquerors, Worms of the Earth, The Watchmen, the title track, Free Spirit Soar, The Bell Tolls, all really cool. I think here we're going to check out the title track, a snippet from it, Free Spirit Soar.
And a reminder, if you're listening to this on Twitch Live or if you're listening on the VOD, either on Twitch or on YouTube, we'll play clips of the songs each and every week. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast source, we do not include the music clips just to be on the safe side, and I don't know what that was. It just beeped at me, but I see we got a new follower, Aria Mila. I've got music. I've got beeps coming on my computer like crazy, so let me mute that. Good stuff live. Just really interesting when you're doing these live shows. You just never know what kind of sounds are going to pop up on your computer, but we're going to check out the music again, not on the podcast version, but on our live versions. We will be playing music, as Mike mentioned. We're going to be playing the title track, Free Spirit Soar, from Warlord. So let's check that out now here on the Nerdcast Empire's Music Weekly.
And through the storms of life, I learned that road is long. Right at that moment, I heard your mighty song. Your city's falling, your skies are burning, but you reached out and pulled me from the dark. Just like an arrow soars into battle, free flight forever. Your spirit will never die. Onward, far from home, far from the journey's end. A burden like a war to fight, soon to lay ahead. What is left behind is all of who we are. Waiting for your song to play, you'll hear a mighty roar, and home will hear.
Very much feels like a classic, just hard rock band that from something that would have fit in the 80s and 90s, but again, bringing that over the top style and doing it in some sort of a modern way. But no, when I listened to this, I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole album yet, but I really enjoyed this, and I think it'd be exciting to see kind of what the rest of the album sounds like and go back and check their back catalog, because again, these guys just really rock. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the reviews I was looking at kind of referenced their sound as being dated, but not even necessarily as a negative thing. It's just it is what it is. That's their sound, and I really liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think dated is something that we deal with a lot on this podcast, because a lot of this music reminds you of a time when this type of music was being played all the time, and it's just a shame that it's not being more widely distributed, because the stuff is really, really good, and it sounds just as good as it did during that previous time. So part of the reason why we're doing this podcast, a chance to spotlight bands like Warlord, who have been rocking it for a long time. Their new release, Free Spirit Soar, excellent. Definitely check that out. Coming up next, we've got another pick by Mike. A little bit different sound, but also a really awesome sound. What have you got for us for pick number 2?
Yeah, I couldn't stay in that same lane for both of my picks, even though this one isn't that great of a departure. I've definitely had some more off the wall picks as far as random punk bands or death metal in the past. But yeah, for my second pick, I am going with the 9th album from the German prog metal band Ivanhoe, and that album is Healed by the Sun.
I feel like there probably is some sort of rule that we have to have at least one prog metal band chosen in our 6 picks, and this is another one that I'm really excited to get a chance to listen to front to back, because they've got a great sound, and I think while different than band number 1, this is a band that also rocks really hard. Tell us more about them.
That and a band that's been around a while. They started back in 1986, so just another artist who has been around. 9 albums strong now that I just have never been exposed to until this point. One thing I found about their sound is, yeah, it's proggy, but it never felt inaccessible. It's still very, I don't want to say basic, because that would be totally underselling it, but it's you don't get the feeling that the musicianship is more important than the songwriting, and I think that's always a good thing with prog bands because they can easily kind of go off the rails with the musicianship, and that didn't really feel like the thing here. Their guitarist Chris Laurie was interviewed by the Made in Metal website and kind of commented on the songwriting process and also the first video for the album, One Ticket to Paradise. And about that, he said that the song itself is about the rising drug abuse that they kind of see, especially for younger people, that kind of started back during the pandemic. And as far as the sound goes, it was interesting. He said that a lot of times when they write about these really serious topics, the music still comes out kind of being bright and almost happy sounding because that's just when they write music and they play music, it kind of comes from the heart and with love. So even when they tackle less than favorable topics, it still kind of comes out with that happy sound. But I definitely more so than what the lyrical content would maybe suggest, but I think it works for them. As far as this album goes, Healed by the Sun, Head Nut, Small Path Home, Invictus, One Ticket to Paradise, War of Ages, all really strong tracks. I think right now I have set up the title track, or I'm sorry, not the title track, One Ticket to Paradise, actually, which is the first video. Really cool song, and we can hear it here.
Yeah, I think anytime you can have that happier sound with serious topics, it makes it much more accessible, which is an easier way of getting your message out as opposed to something that is terrible, but it sounds really dark too. It's like sometimes people kind of give up on that, but no, these guys did a really good job of making tough messages more accessible to the listener, and we're going to get a chance to hear an example of that right here. This is One Ticket to Paradise off of Healed by the Sun by Ivanhoe. Really good stuff there by Ivanhoe from the song One Ticket to Paradise from Healed by the Sun. Again, just a great sound, the type of sound that we hear a lot on this program, but I never get tired of it because it does rock hard, but you do have the melodic element to it as well. And, of course, the prog, you can hear that as well. It just kind of ties the whole thing together. And, again, very bright sound, despite the fact that the lyrical content is certainly a little bit more serious.
Yeah, absolutely. In kind of mentioning the prog element to it, you can definitely hear it there in some of the fills and just like the little bass interlude there going into the next verse. But to me, the songs still feel really strong as just songs. So I think it's a good blend of that.
Yeah, no question about that. So definitely check that out. Ivanhoe with Healed by the Sun, their new album is definitely worth a listen. So Chris picked a couple songs as well, and of course, Chris, you can see in our chat tonight, not able to join us on the air, but do want to get a chance to talk about his two picks. And the first pick is from the band Sonic Universe with the album It Is What It Is. Of course, Sonic Universe, a band that the fans of Living Colour are certainly going to want to check this out. Of course, the lead singer of Living Colour, Corey Glover, he is singing on this project as well. Mike Orlando from Adrenaline Mob, he's really the creative force behind this. And then Taekwon Jackson from Sworn Enemy and bassist Booker King joining together to kind of create this group. And this was certainly one of the songs that would have been really close to being on my list, and I'm sure yours as well, Mike, because just a ton of musical talent in this band, and I think something that everybody's going to want to check out. We're going to listen to a clip from this album, and then we'll kind of get your thoughts kind of coming in behind. We're going to check out One of the tracks off of this album, we're going to actually check out the first track off of the album. It is I Am from Sonic Universe, and it is what it is. The song I Am. Let's listen to that now.
Can't take it away. Can't take it away. I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay. Can't take it away. Can't take it away. I'm here to stay. I am what I am. Of that you don't need to wonder. I am what I am. Can't take one from the other. I am what I am. Don't mean that I ain't your brother. I am what I am. Won't let you take me under. No matter the shape or color. Won't let you take my thunder. Open my mouth, you did not hear. Tried to testify, was not clear.
Yeah, it's got such a great sound to it. Obviously, Corey Glover sounds just as good today as he sounded in the 90s, which is amazing. Just got a great sound. The one thing I noticed listening to that back again is I kind of get a little bit of like funk metal vibe to it there. Kind of reminds me of a group like Saigon Kick, who could kind of get into that as well. A little bit harder, obviously, but again, really, really like this album. I think it's a great choice by Chris. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking maybe like a Faith No More as well.
Yeah.
Similar vibe there. Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that I haven't listened to more involving Corey Glover, just because the guy is such a great rock front man and lead singer. Obviously, Vivid from Living Colour is just a tremendous album. I honestly would like to get more into their catalog, because I've listened to that album numerous times, and not, originally for Cult of Personality, because that I first heard that on some rock, might have been like Monsters of Rock, or one of those like compilation CDs I had a long, long time ago, and eventually got into that album, which has great songs on its own. I mean, Open Letter to a Landlord is tremendous. Glamour Boys, just a great album. But yeah, I really like this. I definitely need to get more into it. And Mike Orlando, obviously no slouch either. Adrenaline Mob was a really good band. Yeah, I have nothing bad to say by any means.
And of course, Orlando, not just a guitar virtuoso, but obviously a recording, mixing, mastering guy too. So I mean, he's the engineer that's kind of making it all sound like it sounds. And he absolutely killed it with this, both in the guitar side and the mixing and engineering side of this album. Of course, Corey Glover, you mentioned just being a quintessential rock front man. Billboard did name him one of the greatest rock singers of all time in 2023. So and again, still sounds great. That's the best part, is he's been doing this for a long time and just powering out those vocals. This would definitely not only be an album that I'd recommend you check out, but if these guys tour somewhere in your area, definitely check them out live. I think they would make for a great live concert. That is Sonic Universe with It Is What It Is. Really excited about this one. Make sure you check that out. Chris had 2 picks, as we all do each and every week. He picked for his second group, the band Vhäldemar, with the album Sanctuary of Death. This is a power metal band from the Basque country of Spain. They were founded in 1999, so another group that's been around a while. This is their 7th full-length album. It's got a great sound as well. Obviously, maybe not the household names that we were just talking about in the previous band, but still just this is a great rock album, and we'll get Mike's thoughts after we listen to part of the first track off of this album, which is Devil's Child. So let's check that out now, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about Vhäldemar and their latest release.
I can't wait for death. When the light turns on, I can see the world. Broken desires, my love stories, and save me from these fates. Let me sing again. Past on my side, I'm alive. I can't move, cold as stone. Now I need even
an album and just think, I think I know what this sounds like. And you look at the album cover of this, and I think I know what this is going to sound like. And yet, it was still really awesome. It was a lot of the things we talked about earlier in a previous band, where it's kind of get that kind of over-the-top, bombastic style, but also you hear some speed elements there. It's definitely not so over-the-top that it's inaccessible, but again, feels like I'm going to put that on. We're going to grab my battle axe and my shield, and we're going to go into war. But really, really like this stuff from Vhäldemar. Your thoughts?
Yeah, both the cover art itself, and then the second you hear them, you're like, yeah, this is a band for me. This is something that I already should have been listening to. How did it escape my attention up until now? Reminds me of so many power metal bands. I kind of get Serenity vibes from them, and that's a band I really love. Like I mentioned before, I didn't really get a chance to get through all of the material that on my first listen, I really enjoyed. And this is one of those bands that I knew I'd be getting back around to. I just still have to do that. But yeah, I mean, they're great.
Yeah, definitely a great pick by Chris. Definitely check out Vhäldemar with Sanctuary of Death, their 7th full-length album. Definitely great stuff. Definitely something you want to check out. I've got 2 picks as well, as I do each and every week, and this first pick is definitely a 180 from Vhäldemar. This is definitely something in a different direction, and honestly, it's kind of different than a lot of the music we've picked on this show, but to me, it stood out at a level where it's like, wow, this is so different, and it's so good that I have to pick this band, and it's the band Revenant with the EP, What a Time to Be Alive. This is a Southern rock band from the UK, so not exactly something you say every day, but it is definitely Southern rock. Reminded me very much of a group like the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Yeah. Definitely got a vibe like that, especially the vocals of Sugarman Sam. Reminded me very much of Kim Wilson's Fabulous Thunderbird vocals. It just really ties the whole thing together. It's guitar rock driven, some great guitar stuff in this, and again, if you'd have told me this group was from somewhere down south in the United States, I would have totally believed it. But the fact they're from the UK is just amazing to me. All 5 songs are excellent. They're all a little bit different, but it's just really, really good. I enjoyed The Healer because it's kind of a slower song, but it definitely has a different sound, but it's really good. But again, I think all 5 are excellent. We're going to get a chance on the live version of our show to listen to the opening track, Coming Back to Life. So we're going to check that out, and then we'll come back and get Mike's thoughts on Revenant and What a Time to Be Alive. Let's listen to a bit of that opening track, Coming Back to Life.
Gotta find my balance, gotta ditch that bitch. Roll those dice, find my fire. Pull my strength and find my soul. Standing on a corner, crossroads in my life. I got children and the sound of my ex-wife. Let go, pain, no more suffering. Coming back to life. Sunrise coming over my dark hill. My heart is fighting.
If modern country music had become this instead of whatever it became, I probably would listen to a lot more country music, because this to me is the direction that Southern rock should have went after the 80s and 90s. But I was just blown away by this. Like I said, 5 tracks. It's all great music, and again, something totally different than really a lot of what we hear on this podcast. But they've done it so well that it's kind of hard to believe they haven't. This isn't like their 7th or 8th album, but I definitely want to hear more from these guys. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, every now and then we get something on the list that is so far out of what we're normally listening to. I think you can't help but gravitate toward it. I kind of felt the same way about the punk band Snuff from like a month or so ago, where it was like, this isn't really my wheelhouse, but man, these guys are doing this so well. I can't help but say this is one of my bands for the week. And that's definitely the case here with Revenant. Still kind of amazing that a British band would be like, I really like Southern rock. We should do that. Like that. It in a way, when you compare it to kind of the current state of modern country music, it's like, they're both in a weird way fraudulent in the fact that, like, okay, neither of you people are legitimately, like, Southern, I suppose, but, like, this feels like a tribute to that sound, whereas maybe current country music doesn't so much. So there's, like, a certain authenticity in the fact that it doesn't feel like they're a parody of that sound. It sounds like that's just what they wanted to go for, and that's what they did. The song "The Healer" was funny because when I first started hearing it, it made me think of Hootie and the Blowfish. I think maybe "Let Her Cry." It was one of their big songs, which isn't a bad thing either because they were immensely popular back in the day. Every now and then you get a really good crunchiness in the guitars. The song "The Masquerade" at the beginning is a good example of that, where it just rocks. But yeah, there's room in my music library for all styles of rock, and certainly Southern rock by a couple British guys certainly fits the bill.
It feels like if a band like the Fabulous Thunderbirds or 38 Special or somebody like that was out doing big tours and they were looking to bring newer bands on, this would be a band that would absolutely fit the bill for something like that.
And it kind of makes you wonder, like, how did they land on that sound? Because was the singer, like, doing karaoke of 38 Special, and they're like, man, you got this figured out. We could probably run with this. Obviously, that's speculation. I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, that someone should be taking them around and bringing this sound to more people for sure.
Well, I know they're from time to time when we tag these bands on Facebook, they go back and listen to this podcast. So guys from Revenant, if you can just tell us in a Facebook comment or maybe point us to an article or something that's been written about you guys and let us know how this sound came about, because you guys nailed it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fantastic. The moment, because Mike and I always go through the list, usually the first time through, and just kind of mark, like, that one's got potential, that one maybe not so much. The moment I heard these guys, like, somebody's got to pick these guys this week. And if it's going to be me, I'm good with that, because every so often you just hear something on that list that is so good that it's like, we have to talk about this band. And that was Revenant for me. So definitely check that out. What a Time to Be Alive. Indeed, the EP, definitely worth a check. The other band was kind of one that caught me off guard because I listened to the track on your list and I thought, these guys sound good. Let me listen to more of them. And I immediately got hooked. The band is called J.D. Miller. The album is Empyrean, I believe. That's how that's pronounced. They are an AOR band from Sweden, but it's more melodic heavy metal. And if you like melodic heavy metal, this band is for you. This is their fourth album. First one since 2019. It's interesting because I guess they've kind of gone through a little change in lineup, and this is maybe a harder sound than what their older stuff has been, and I've not had the chance to listen to their older stuff, but I certainly will now. The Brazilian website Rock Report called this the hardest J.D. Miller ever, and a Swedish rock magazine called it the hardest AOR around. So, I like that.
So somebody had to have that title.
And surely that we would find them on this podcast because we talk so much about AOR bands, but I really enjoyed how the intro track, Prelude to the Empyrean, goes right into the second track, The Butterfly. I don't feel like enough bands do that stuff on albums. I think that's a nice touch when the tracks kind of run together. I mean, that's what your intro track should do. It should take me into what is really the first song on the album. The Butterfly was really good. Other standout tracks, I have the whole album. I've got a couple more tracks left to listen to on this, but Inside the Night, Out of Control was a little slower, but it kind of changes speeds, picks up, slows down. Really like that. And we're going to hear a part of 1 in a Million that I thought was really good, but just really totally blown away by these guys. This is such a great sound, and I'm really excited to get a chance to finish this off and listen to their older stuff. But for now, we're going to listen to 1 in a Million from J.D. Miller and Empyrean, their new release. So check that out now here on Music Weekly.
As fast as we are going, flying while we're falling, nothing's gonna turn around. Wrecking ball, you're swinging, turning while I'm singing. We will never stay alive. In the nighttime, I am all you're really dreaming of. I'm 1 in a million, I am all you ever need.
little bit there, right as we get ready to close that out. A little bit of almost like a synth sound as well that kind of worked its way in at the end. But this is one of those ones where, like I said, I heard that first track from the last band and was immediately like, okay, I'm gonna pick these guys. And then this one, it was one of those. The more I listened to the stuff off the album, the more I was just blown away. Like, man, this is so good. This is probably one of the best all-around albums I've had the chance to pick, and I'm excited to get a chance to talk about it. I know you had a chance to listen to some of it as well, Mike. Curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, first, I guess I have a question. I didn't see where they got their name from.
I was not able to find that information either. Because if JD Miller, if your band listens to us, let us know where that name came from. Because nobody in the band named JD Miller. That is not. And of course, it did make it a little challenging at times to find information on them because you just find people named JD Miller. But yeah, I would definitely like to know and we'll do a little more research into where that name came from.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious because when I'm pulling these album releases off my list or for my list, I see a name like JD Miller and I just think it's some random solo artist that, God knows what they're going to sound like. Could be the spectrum tends to widen in those scenarios.
Yeah.
So when I stumbled into this and realized that this isn't just some dude named JD Miller, I think not only that, but it's a Swedish AOR group. I was like, wait a minute, what am I getting into here exactly? Really enjoyed what I've listened to so far. Very melodic. Got a lot of like modern sounds with like the electronics they use in some of their songs, which I thought was cool. And it's funny because as I took that down as my notes for my notes, that sample you played, I was just thinking, man, that guitar solo is so 80s. Like it's just, which is tremendous. But my first thought was like, this is some song that was written in 1987 or something. But then you listen to more of their catalog or more of their album and you don't get that same vibe all the time. But yeah, it's definitely really, really heavy AOR, which I think we could use more of.
Absolutely. I think anytime we get a chance to hear, I'm a big fan of AOR. I think everybody who's listened to this podcast, this is the 15th music episode we've done, so I think my tastes in music are pretty well established at this point. If it's melodic metal, if it's prog metal, if it's AOR, odds are I'm going to probably gravitate towards it. But of those type of bands, this is one of the hardest ones I think I've heard, and I'm super excited not only to hear the rest of this album, but to get a chance to listen to some of their back catalog as well. So really excited about JD Miller Empyrean, AOR band from Sweden, with their release this week, or from May the 10th, I should say. Definitely check that out. Glad you joined us so far on this live edition of Music Weekly on Monday, as it turns out. This week, we are going to step aside if you're listening on the podcast edition. When we come back, we're going to go into the vault, where Mike and I will give you an album from the past that you need to check out. We'll do that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, for those of you on the podcast coming back from the break, of course, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can check out our store. We do have a Ko-fi page. Of course, the biggest thing people can do at this point is just share our posts on social media, give us good reviews. Right now, we're kind of making a push on Twitch to continue to gain subscribers. So if you can subscribe on Twitch, again, it doesn't cost you a dime just to follow, I should say, not subscribe. Try to get my terms correct.
Just your undying loyalty. That is all we ask for.
Right. If you follow us on Twitch, we can get to so many followers, and eventually we can have subscribers and kind of go from there. We're working our way up slowly on that list. And, of course, you've seen all of our usernames in the chat. We all have our individual Twitch pages as well. Please, if you can, give those some love. We're going to try to use those more in the days and weeks to come as well, with some non-music related, non-podcast related content. And we're only a couple months away from our 1-year anniversary of doing this. So we've got lots of stuff coming in the future. We've got some videos that I've shot that'll go up on our YouTube page. It's a lot, honestly, right now, but it's a lot of fun to do. So we're going to continue to do more cool things in the future with the Nerdcast Empire. Coming up Thursday, probably sometime between 8:30 and 9 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll be back with another episode of Anime Thursdays. We're talking Animation, which may very well be the best anime convention in the United States, at least that we know of. We're going to be talking about that coming up on Thursday, and our thoughts, and talk about the trip and all the stuff that kind of went with that coming up. And then Sunday night, we'll be back in our normal time slot, 7 o'clock Eastern, for another edition of Music Weekly. We'll be talking about the music from May the 17th when we come back on Sunday night. And, of course, you can download podcast versions of all these episodes. You can go check out our previous episodes on the podcast Wherever you get your podcasts, look for Nerdcast Empire, and you will find us there. Time to go into the vault, where we look at some previous albums and give you something to check out that is from the past. Mike, will let you go first since Chris isn't with us this week, and you are continuing through the alphabet. You have crossed over the halfway point. We are now into the back half of the alphabet, and another great pick this week. Tell us what you got for the vault.
It's been a process. I feel like I've grown and learned a lot along the way about both music and myself. Yeah, we crossed the M threshold and now to the letter N. And for this week, I am going with a 2005 album from great band that sadly is no longer with us, Nevermore, and their album is This Godless Endeavor.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Normally, I try to get a chance to listen to the Vault stuff. I did not get a chance to listen to this, but I know how good this band is, or how good this band was, and certainly a chance here with this 2005 release to get a chance to check them out.
Yeah, it's their sixth studio album, a band that at the time I really didn't know a lot about. It wasn't until around that time they were announced as being a part of Megadeth's Gigantor that they kind of got on my radar, and I can't recall if I listened to this or Enemies of Reality first. That was their prior album. But I was immediately kind of drawn in because of Warl Dane's vocals. He just had such a different vocal style than a lot of the modern metal I was listening to at that point in time, and really thought that was cool. Come to find out, he had a prior band, Sanctuary, that he actually restarted not too long prior to his death, unfortunately, which was in 2015. But both bands are really cool and just kind of highlight his unique vocal style. As far as this album and this band specifically go, This Godless Endeavor, the first track, Born. If I had to come up with a list of the greatest opening tracks to metal albums, Born would certainly be probably pretty close to the top. It's just such an amazing track. Just the way right off the bat it just hits you in the face. Just there's no like settling in. It's just right at you right at the beginning. And then the chorus is one of my favorite choruses of all time. Like just the emotion it kind of evokes in you when you hear it. It's so cool, and I can't recommend it enough. Interesting thing, too, about the album is the artwork was done by Hugh Syme, who has done so many album covers over the years. For me, he was more known as the dude who took over doing Megadeth album art after Ed Repka, so albums like Countdown to Extinction, Euthanasia, Cryptic Writings were all him. But, he also did work for Rush, Dream Theater, Queensryche, among many, many others. As far as tracks on this album to check out, obviously I mentioned Born. Also Final Product, My Acid Words, Sentient 6, The Psalm of Lydia, and the title track, This Godless Endeavor, all really cool and worth checking out.
Just a few notes from Wikipedia that kind of tie some of this together. The music video for Born premiered on Headbangers Ball.
Revival of Headbangers Ball.
2006, so that's kind of cool. The German publication Rock Hard voted it number 256 in their book, The 500 Greatest Rock and Metal Albums of All Time. The other thing, too, when you note, because all these Wikipedia pages have critic scores, basically. They'll go through and pick some of the
list of different publications.
Yeah, and then, of course, they all have their own systems. But it's been a while since I've seen one that had this kind of scoring. They got 10 out of 10 from Chronicles of Chaos, Metal Eater, Rock Hard, Metal Storm, 9 out of 10 from Maelstrom, 8 out of 10 from Pop Matters, 4 out of 5 from All Music, 4 out of 5 from Anti Music, 4.5 out of 5 from Sea of Tranquility, 4.6 out of 5 from Metal Crypt. Just, you rarely ever see that kind of agreement on all these metal websites that, man, this was outstanding. And in some cases, you're talking 10 out of 10s. Some of these sites are pretty critical, I think more so than we are on this podcast. For them to rank this so high just tells you that you need to go check out this album, that it is clearly not just a great album by this band, but maybe one of the all-time best rock albums ever, in fact, to get that kind of a score.
Yeah, a lot of those publications are critical to the point of cynicism, where it's not really enjoyable to read what they say. So it's always cool when so many of them enjoy it. Kind of more on Warlord and also kind of his first band Sanctuary is, they were a band that was like an 80s metal band that actually Dave Mustaine produced the first album for. Refuge Denied, which is a really good album.
Sounds like a Megadeth song.
Yeah, they have a cover of White Rabbit on it that's really good. But I mean, these guys all came out of like Seattle, so they had kind of more of that like almost Queensryche prog melodic pedigree to them. And when you listen to Warlord sing, especially on the Sanctuary stuff, you get that. Like, there's a lot of like higher register stuff, and I think it's all really cool. A band that both Sanctuary and Nevermore, I would have loved to have gotten more material from, but sadly that won't be happening. But yeah, both are worth looking into.
Yeah, definitely check that out. Great pick from the vault this week. The Godless Endeavor, the 2005 release from the band Nevermore, Mike's pick from the vault this week. Well, as we mentioned, as I talk about each and every week, my trip through the vault started back with the Chicago Transit Authority album from 1969, about 10 weeks ago, as it turns out. So we are now up to 1979. Still have not gotten to an album that was released after my date of birth. That'll be coming up for sure next week. But this album was released in March of 1979. Should be noted, 1979 had a lot of really great albums. It also had a lot of albums that had really great tracks on it. And when you just kind of run down a few of those real quick, because there were some bands that released stuff in 79 that I have already picked for this that I didn't really want to pick again so quickly. But that kind of led to this pick because you had The Long Run by the Eagles, really great album, came out in 1979. Head Games, just a tremendous album from Foreigner that was a 1979 release. You also had some albums that had great tracks on them, like ELO's Discovery, which of course had Don't Bring Me Down on it, Evolution, the Journey album, and then maybe a couple that are a little more off the radar a little bit. First Under the Wire, which was a release from the Little River Band that had Cool Change and, of course, Lonesome Loser on it, a really good album. And if I had to chuckle and put on my list, Partners in Crime, the album by Rupert Holmes, which, of course, had Escape, the Pina Colada song, which is one of the more classic rock songs of all time.
Yeah, that is... I don't know any other songs by him, but that is a classic.
And that's why I didn't pick it, because I don't know any other songs by him either. So what I ended up going with after telling you all the honorable mentions was the album, I would say, from the band Supertramp, the English rock band, Breakfast in America, released in March of 1979. It was wildly successful. It was, I find my notes here, quadruple platinum. It was their biggest selling album. It was number one on the Billboard pop charts for 6 weeks in the middle of 1979. Hit number one in several countries, including Norway, Austria, West Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Canada, Australia, and France. And it makes sense because it had some massive hits on it. On side one, you started off with Gone Hollywood and then 3 big hits back to back to back. The Logical Song, Goodbye Stranger, and Breakfast in America. Then you come back to the start of side 2 and you get Take the Long Way Home. 4 really big hit songs off of this album. It's just probably, they're a band that a lot of times gets lumped into kind of a greatest hits band, but if you only had to buy one album, or only could buy one album from Supertramp, this is the one to buy because it really has 4 of their best hits on it. It's funny, we heard another Supertramp song on the way back way to Raleigh this weekend, and they definitely have a distinctive sound. There's no question. And some of their older stuff, like, you could tell they hadn't quite got there yet, but they were headed in that direction, and they really did get there with this album. But some of my favorite Supertramp songs on this album, it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of theirs, or if you're just looking for a foot in the door with Supertramp. This is really the album you need to pick up. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, when you'd first mentioned that this was the album you were picking, in as opposed to some of the other kind of more prolific bands that had so many more maybe great albums or good albums, looking at the track list, it was obvious, like, well, if there's ever a time that we're going to pick Supertramp, this is the time to pick Supertramp. Such a distinct sound. I kind of wonder if they didn't get any kind of bump in downloads when The Office was airing, and you had the Michael Scott like spoof of Goodbye Stranger. I hope that's the case, but I can't verify that at the moment. They seem like a band that, for whatever reason, didn't really translate over to the 80s very well. I don't know why that is, but you didn't really hear a whole lot of them. Whenever they have throwback weekends to the 80s, it's not typically involving Supertramp, and I think that's unfortunate because they had just a cool, different sound that I think I would definitely want to hear more of, actually.
And what's interesting is they had 3 albums released in the 80s. Famous Last Words came out in 1982, Brother, Where You Bound in 1985, and Free as a Bird in 1987. They ended up breaking up for the first time in 1988, but just kind of surprising that those just didn't hit at a time where you had so many bands from the UK like hitting big as that early pop sound of the 1980s kind of kicked in. I don't know if these guys just didn't, just couldn't find that song that kind of put them in with those groups from the early 1980s, but really this 1979 release was really the height of their popularity. They did have It's Raining Again on the 1982 release. Famous Last Words, which was certainly a hit for them, but not quite to that same level.
Yeah, I do see where Roger Hodgson left the band in 83.
That certainly probably didn't help.
English singer, musician, and songwriter, best known as the former co-frontman and founding member of progressive rock band Supertramp. Like, he composes and sang the majority of the band's hits, so you have to think that played a role in that.
Yeah,
but I don't seem to recall him having a super prolific solo career afterwards. In 1984 to present.
Yeah, I mean, he was involved in a lot of stuff. In fact, I guess nearly joined the band Yes back in 1990.
That would have worked, I think.
Yeah.
I think his vocals would have lended themselves well to Yes.
But really talented guy, still alive, 74 years old, so great to see. But this is really the album. If you had to get one, like you said, Supertramp album, this is the one to pick. So it's the one I picked this week for the Vault for 1979. Next week we'll get into the 80s. And again, with every year going by, the list of choices just continues to grow exponentially. So.
But it is kind of a fun thing about the Vault, especially when you're doing this yearly deal where, I get a chance to kind of go back to the history of some of these bands that I'm familiar with their hits, but don't really know much about their history and their story. So it is kind of cool to get to go back and kind of learn, even if it's on the fly, where these bands have been and what happened to them, and kind of a behind the music or where are they now situation.
Yeah, not just a chance to listen to great music, but also a chance to learn a little music history, which of course always ties in. It's always interesting to continue to find these things out as we move along. That's going to wrap things up for this edition of Music Weekly live on Twitch. Big thank you to everybody that joined us. Everybody joined us in the chat. If you're listening on the podcast, a big thanks to everyone who downloads our podcast each and every week. We're really, really grateful for all the support that we get each and every week on this podcast. It's been a lot of fun to continue to do. We are up to episode 62. We're going to continue to roll on each and every week. And again, coming up on Thursday, we'll be talking anime and talk about our trip to Animazement, which I'm super excited to get a chance to discuss. And then, of course, coming up Sunday, we'll have our latest edition of Music Weekly, when we talk about the music from May the 17th. Big thanks to Mike for putting the list together as he does each and every week. Big thanks to Chris for his help as well, not only in the chat, but obviously kind of putting all this together and helping us out with all the live streaming stuff. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. Again, I know just about time for Nate to head off to France for the summer. Hopefully he enjoys himself. We've got some more exciting stuff coming down the pipeline over the next few weeks, so make sure you stick around. Share our posts. Check us out live when we're live. Check us out on the podcast. It's the best way for us to continue to grow and do more exciting things. That's going to wrap things up for this week. For the entire crew, I am Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.